Hey guys, happy day. Greg here, Intersection Legal. Just want to drop you some value on purchasing property in El Salvador today. 3 things you should definitely be looking out for and planning for in advance of purchasing real estate in El Salvador if you want to do things correctly, save yourself a bunch of headaches, save yourself a bunch of money. So let's dive right into it today, okay? The first thing that you're going to want to do is market research. Now, if you're looking for a condo in the city or a place at the beach or a place in the mountains, you want to pick your specific geographic region and look for comparables. Because there's currently no active MLS in El Salvador, you need to get creative. So we'll use Facebook, we'll use Encuentra, we'll use some of the other marketplaces that we know we've sourced out that have credible listings. There's about 10 half decent platforms in El Salvador that have various listings, and we'll take a little bit from each and we'll compile them. So if you're looking for let's just say, for example, you're looking for a place at the beach. Well, we'll go ahead and, we'll look at you want 3 bedrooms, let's say. So we'll go ahead and we'll source out 3 bedroom locations, maybe 2 bath in a variety of different locations, okay? And then we'll go ahead and compare the square meters of the house, the square meters of the property, and how close they are to amenities. And by doing this and creating yourself a spreadsheet, you can actually build your own comparison chart. Now, we go ahead and do this for our clients along, as part of our services. So if you want us to handle that for you, we definitely can. Something like that market research typically starts in around $1,000. So depending on how you value your time and, what level of professional you want to deal with, you might want to reach out to us for those kind of services, market research. And that'll really help you dig into what's a fair value. And ultimately, you want to get it dialed into probably price per square meter on the house and price per square meter on the property. Those are, 2 distinguishing factors, because that allows us to really identify what's a great deal. If you've got a spread in a certain area in there, whatever, let's just say $100 a square meter for the property, and then you notice that one is, $75 per square meter, then hey, perhaps that's a great deal and you want to look into that. It could be just a fake listing, and that's something we can help you out with as well, but that's how you want to do your market research and get dialed in on the value of the property in El Salvador. Okay, so that's the first thing we recommend. Now, let's say you go ahead and you've identified what the property is that you want. Well, oftentimes there may be an appraisal that's come in from the seller. Now, the seller has their own biased opinion and oftentimes will try and find an appraiser that is motivated to appraise the property higher on behalf of the seller. And it's funny, and although it's now the safest country in the Americas, El Salvador, there's still a little bit of corruption, especially in the real estate market. And, some of these owners will get creative and maybe bribe an appraiser to put the value higher and show that like market value might be XYZ, but the property's appraised at, an inflated value. So you really got to be careful. You also got to be careful too of the appraisals that are coming from the banks, because oftentimes the banks will appraise properties lower than the actual, not even close to market value, because they want to lower their risk tolerance. And of course, that's the most important things to the bank, is lowering their risk and making money and securing their money. So you also got to be careful on that side, okay? If you want to make sure you're dealing with not only a licensed appraiser, but one of the highest quality appraisers in the country, and oftentimes the appraisers that we deal with, we not only make sure we pre-vet them, but oftentimes the appraisers we deal with, the banks respect their appraisals and will welcome their appraisals and use it as, let's say, leverage if you want to go ahead and apply for a mortgage on that specific property. If you say, hey, I've got an agreement on a property, it's $400,000, I have $100,000 down, like to borrow $300,000, the bank, depending on the appraiser that you've chosen, might actually accept that appraisal rather than sending their own appraiser to the property. So it's important that you pick the right appraiser and you know the ins and outs of how the game's played in El Salvador. Okay? So that's important when it comes to having your property appraised. Now, the third thing that's really common in North America, United States, and Canada is to actually have home inspection or property inspection. And so in El Salvador, we don't really have that. There's a few that, kind of dabble in it. But typically, what I do specifically is I have some engineers that I have go out and review the property and the roof and what you can review from a topographical perspective, right? It's not like you can dig into the wall or the foundation, but if you do a thorough review on the property, you can get a pretty good insight into what's happening, maybe underneath the surface, right? Now, I've gotten into redeveloping properties in El Salvador, and especially at the beach, where there just wasn't maintenance done. And the further we got into the house, we noticed even the metal beams supporting the roof were rusted out and had to be replaced. And there's only a certain amount of stuff you can see when you're doing an inspection, but it's probably good value to have that property inspected. Also, we can also check the original architectural drawings from when the house was designed. That's a great way to do it. We can have our engineer check that. And also, you definitely want to have your lawyer check the CNR, the registry, to make sure the property has recently been remeasured, because the CNR, the National Registry of El Salvador, has been really, really working on the real estate industry and remeasuring properties, and a lot of them they just haven't got to. So I've gotten into a lot of deals where we went to register the property and there was a confliction between the actual measurements of the property and what they had at the registry, and so we had to actually take additional time and additional money and have the property re-registered and bring in topographical engineers to do that. And of course we can handle that. But it did take additional time. So these are all things that, a good inspection, depending where you're at, is probably going to cost you $1,000. And a good investigation up front, market research, probably $1,000. And, a good property appraisal, somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000. It's $3,000. But it could end up saving you, $100,000 or more if you don't want to buy a lemon, right? So you can definitely do that yourself, and I've given you some tips and tricks on how to do that. If you're looking to purchase real estate in El Salvador, you're welcome to reach out to us. We've got a ton of great lawyers that can back you up, and we got connections with realtors and architects and all that stuff. So happy to hop on a call. Links down below, Intersection Legal, and we'd love to see you down in El Salvador. Hope this helps. If it did, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Juice the algorithm for me, and this is Greg. We'll see you in the promised land, all right? Happy day.